When you hear the word boss or manager or even owner, what comes to mind?
Hello, Peter. What's happening?
Now contrast that with Elon Musk.
Offer me money. Offer me power. I don't care.
Well, Elon Musk is leaving.
Or at least the first to admit.
Elon Musk privately warned the biggest names in technology descended on Capitol Hill today.
Elon Musk's brain implant startup Neuralink is recruiting patients for a clinical trial.
My name is Nick McLean with 4 Pillars Investors. I've been in the M&A private equity industry for about 15 years now, and leadership has always been a long-term interest of mine. Which brings us to the topic for today, a specific type of leadership called servant leadership. 4 Pillars was founded on 4 basic principles: relationships as a cornerstone for success, challenge the status quo, persistence, and the topic today, servant leadership. Now, when you hear servant leadership, you might already know what that is and what it entails, or it might be an entirely new concept to you. I think for some people, when they hear servant leadership, it really, almost might have a negative connotation to them. In business, a lot of people take the mindset, service, that's, I'll go do that on a Saturday for a couple of hours to prove I give back to the community or whatever. We don't have time to think about service in our business. We got to focus on the customer, or we got to focus on, getting widgets out the door or whatever. And I certainly understand where that mindset might come from, because we all have a job to do, no question. However, I think that there is a way to adapt or adopt servant leadership in the business environment that takes a slightly different perspective. When we talk about or think about servant leadership at 4 Pillars, it's less about the actual act of service, and it's more about thinking about how we can help the others in the organization as one part of the goal, but with the other part of the goal being to further the organization's goals as a whole. So I guess the distinction there is it's not service just to serve, it's being a leader that helps support and grow the other members of the organization, with the overarching goal being growth for the organization as a whole. I think both of those are good. I wouldn't want to be a leader that said, I only care about the individual, or I only care about the team and I don't care about the company. That's kind of a situation where you could get too focused on the team and not have a company that's surviving.
Ooh, yeah.
On the flip side, you don't only want to have a company that's successful, because if you have a company that's successful but a team that's dysfunctional, well, your company might be successful today, but I would wager a bet that it's not going to be successful for the long term.
It's not a pyramid scheme. It's not even a scheme per se.
Even before learning about servant leadership, one of my favorite leadership quotes was one by Truman. And I probably won't get this exactly right, but the essence of the quote was that a good leader is somebody that can get somebody else to do something that they don't want to do and actually like it. I thought of that a lot with different managers and bosses and whatnot that I've had over the years. And it really resonated with me, because there were certain bosses and they would ask me to do things, and I'd be, for example, there was one boss I had that, every month he would have a meeting for a trade group in the office, and he'd ask me to, get coffee and pastries and essentially be a server for the meeting. And come on, that wasn't really my job. Like, I was, had a desk type job at that point. But because I liked my manager so much, I really wanted to do anything that would help him and, make him happy. And so I had every desire to be as successful as I could in that role. And that role was, pouring coffee and making pastries. I think you see a lot of that type of followership, if you will, for the folks that really resonate with Elon Musk's leadership style. Over the years, Elon's been in the news a lot about different aspects of his leadership style. Some of them are not so great. So for example, as of late, there's this whole cage fight thing with Mark Zuckerberg, and even devolved further from a cage fight. I don't necessarily see how that motivates the troops. Maybe I'm missing something. However, what I do think was really motivating and inspirational even was the story about how he would sleep on the factory floor whenever there was a key challenging period at Tesla.
I slept on the floor so that the team who was going through a hard time could see me on the floor, that they knew that I was not in some ivory tower.
This isn't a guy that just sits in the ivory tower and says, fix the issue, and then he's gone for the next week or two or month or whatever. No, he doesn't just tell you to fix the issue. He works alongside you, and actually, when you go home to your family, he's sleeping on an engineer's desk somewhere to prove how committed he is. He not only wants to solve the problem, but he wants to show that he cares about the team and understands what they're going through. I think that that's a great example of servant leadership. It's putting the team and the goal ahead of yourself. I think it's obvious that people will have certain types of leadership styles that they gravitate to the most. So, whether that's a more charismatic leader or this or that, there's probably for each person a few styles, the absolute preferred style of leadership that they prefer to work with.
Yeah, that's how.
Okay, Jim, help it. I need your eyes up front.
Oh no, I was just.
No, hey, I just want to hear yes.
Yes.
Good.
However, I'll make the argument that servant leadership it's going to be a type of leadership that many people are going to gravitate towards. If you look at some of the concepts of servant leadership, which is putting others before yourself, leaving your ego in check, sharing power, sharing information as opposed to hoarding it. These are all things that many people, I think, are going to appreciate, not just in their boss, but also an organization.
You gotta be kidding me.
Sorry?
You're Elon Musk.
I am?
If you contrast the qualities that I just shared about servant leadership with the opposite, somebody that seeks power just to have the power, that hoards information to further their own power, that uses really coercion as a leadership style. Sure, there are bound to be people that can thrive in that scenario, but it's certainly not the type of culture that we would be looking for whenever we're considering a potential acquisition. In my career, I've certainly experienced people that I would consider to be servant leaders and people that I would say fell quite a bit short of that mark. At one place that I worked, there were two partners. There was one that had the servant leadership mindset and the other that didn't. One really good example that definitely set the stage for how I should expect my future career at this firm was on the Friday before, I think it was Memorial Day. The partner I didn't get along with as well was already out of the office. Surely working hard, of course, right? However, the other partner was still there. It was about 3 o'clock. It was in a city that was a few hours away from where I grew up. And so for the long weekend, I was going to head back to where I grew up. So like I said, around 2 or 3 o'clock, the partner that was still there checked in, said, hey, I'm thinking about cutting out a little bit early and just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything I could do for you before I left. There was one other, higher up manager, checked in with her as well. Nope, there was nothing. Okay, guys, I'm headed out of here. Have a nice holiday weekend. Didn't think there were any issues there. Come Tuesday, after the holiday, the other partner stopped by my office first thing Tuesday morning, said, hey, Nick, I heard you left a little bit early on Friday. I said, yes, sir. He said, that's unacceptable. Don't let it happen again, and walked off. And I was very frustrated with the situation because I really tried to make sure that nothing was getting left undone on that day that I could have done, even if there was no deadline or whatever. And it really spoke to me as this coming from a person that didn't care about me personally. He only cared about having people in the office from, not just 8 to 5, but I think I was working like 6 to 6 at that point in my life. There's that example. There's how that influenced the rest of my time at that firm, but there's also a bigger consequence. I think almost everyone in mergers and acquisitions, in private equity, investment banking, will all say that it's a relationship business. And it's true. If somebody wants to sell their business, it's going to be the biggest transaction of their lives. They're not just going to do a quick Google search and, oh, this guy will buy my business, I'll sell it to him. Whoever you use to help you sell a business or whoever you sell your business to, there needs to be some sort of relationship in place. And as we're sitting here today, some 10, 15 years since I was in that role, it's interesting because the partner that I really worked well with, if he called me up today and asked me to do something, or he said, hey Nick, is there any way you could help me out on this? I would do it in a moment's notice. If the other partner called, quite frankly, I'd probably screen the call, let it go to voicemail, listen to his voicemail, and at best respond via email indicating that I didn't know if I was really the best person to help him on that particular objective or whatever. As many benefits as I see to servant leadership, I certainly think there are a few scenarios or situations in which servant leadership can be viewed to be ineffective. I think the first is just that in certain company cultures, servant leadership is not going to mesh well. The one I think of primarily is a company with a real competitive culture. Now, a competitive culture can be a great thing for certain companies. It's not going to work for all, but it can be for some. If your company does have a competitive culture and that culture is working, your employees are engaged, they're sticking around, or except I guess the top performers are, because the ones that aren't competing as well are probably choosing to bow out or whatever. But if that culture is working for your company, that's great. I can make the argument that servant leadership might not be the right leadership style for that type of organization. The other challenge, if you will, to servant leadership might be that sometimes people might view servant leaders as being weak.
Why don't you go in there, Dwight, and find these people a plan that'll work for them, okay?
I can handle it.
Okay. All right. We feel good? All right. Good.
What I mean by that is, sometimes folks will see a servant leader as not willing to make the decision or not being assertive in making the decision. A great example here is whenever we're working with a business owner that's thinking about selling to us, they'll say, well, what are your plans for the business? And that's really hard for me to answer because I don't want to have the ego of sitting across the desk from a person who's run this business for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and in the 1 month to 1 year or 2 years maybe that I've known the business, you'll have the ego to say that I can come up with a better strategic plan than he can. However, on the flip side, I realize that I can't be so equivocal and not give the business owner any thoughts about what we're trying to do, because that's ineffective as well. So what I try and do here is really still incorporate the tenets of servant leadership, but also creating a path to being as decisive as the business owner wants me to be. For example, how I answer that question is I can give you my thoughts today as to what I think would be effective to grow this business. But we strive and we enjoy being very collaborative. And I wouldn't want to sit across the table from you and tell you these are the 5 things that are going to make up our strategy once the transaction closes. Instead, I would prefer to have that conversation with you so that we can mutually agree as to what the best course of action is. However, if your position is you're going to be the owner and you Nick need to decide what the strategy is going to be, perfectly comfortable doing that. We've been in that situation before. We've helped set strategy for a lot of companies. However, my starting point is always going to be to work with the business owner, be collaborative, because the last thing we want to do is ignore the experience and wisdom of somebody that's been running the business for far longer than we ever have or potentially ever will. If you want to learn more about servant leadership, of course you can read the book by that title by Robert Greenleaf. However, if you want something that you can implement more immediately, certainly there's at least a couple of tips or tricks that you can try even today. Thinking through things, I would say probably the easiest way you can start to implement servant leadership is simply by looking at the team that reports to you, thinking about what you can do to help them be more effective in their job, and think about how that contrasts with how you're thinking about the situation at present. Simply thinking about those types of questions will at least start you on the path towards becoming a servant leader. I know I referenced Elon earlier in the video about an example of servant leadership, but you don't have to be Elon Musk to be a servant leader. I will never have the charisma of Elon. However, if you're the type of business owner that not only cares about the health of your business, but also the well-being of your employees, the well-being of your employees' families, then I think it might be worth a conversation to talk to me about what a partnership with 4 Pillars might look like. Of course, I'd like you to hit the like or subscribe. Also, feel free to email me at the email address below. My name is Nick McLean with 4 Pillars Investors. We're a private equity firm that works with family-owned and founder-led businesses. If you're looking to transition out of your business and you want a partner that will help your business achieve that next level of growth, please reach out.